So thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Christine, and I'll go into a little bit more of a self-introduction shortly. But today's webinar is on remote onboarding. And we'll be talking about this work from home environment that we're in now. Some companies have been doing it for quite a while, and we have Christy here from BlueStacks who's going to take us through their company's experience with remote work, as they are not doing it just as a result to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll share a little bit about our experience at Wahl+Case doing this, where our transition to remote work is much more driven by the happenings of the past 6 months or so. But we'll look about what are the challenges, what are the best practices, and specifically look at remote onboarding. So the process of hiring and bringing new employees into your company in this situation, especially if it's not something that your company is used to, or it's not something that you've done before either. All right, so let's dive in. If you are new to Wahl+Case, just in terms of a quick introduction, we are a tech recruitment company here in Tokyo, and I am talent manager within Wahl+Case. So I'm looking at our talent acquisition, our onboarding, learning development, and performance management for the recruitment business here. I'm American, but I've been here in Japan for about 15 years and working in the recruitment industry for the majority of that time. I'd like to turn things over to Christy now to introduce herself and a bit about BlueStacks.
Hey, thanks, Christine. So, hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for joining today. So a quick intro about myself. I'm a country manager of BlueStacks Systems in Japan. So I first started my career at Sumitomo Corporation, Sumitomo Shoji. In 2015, I had the chance to work in the Bay Area and got engaged with Sumitomo's venture investment. And BlueStacks is actually a portfolio company of Sumitomo, so that's how I got connected with the company. And after I returned to Japan, I decided to join the team in 2017. And ever since then, we haven't had office in Japan, so I've been working from home for 3 years now. So I'll be happy to share about my experience in this webinar today. Next slide, please. And a bit more about our company. So BlueStacks is a startup based in Silicon Valley, founded in 2010. Our CEO is Rosen Sharma. This is his 8th startup, so and he's been very successful with the past ones. And as BlueStacks, we have a very global team, currently 300 plus employees in 25 plus countries. So not just the team in Japan, but in other countries as well. A lot of the teams are working from home. So as a company culture, we are very used to this remote work style. And also we are backed by very nice investors, including Intel, Samsung, AMD, and as I mentioned, Sumitomo Corporation. And we are profitable. Next slide, please. And a bit about BlueStacks. So BlueStacks is what we call an Android app player. So it enables users to play their mobile games on PC. And the background for that is, these days, mobile games are becoming very high quality, and it requires some spec for your phones to get the best, gaming experience. So our proposal is, while you're at home, why don't you play these mobile games on PC using BlueStacks with a much bigger screen and mouse and keyboard controls. So as you can imagine, in this COVID-19 situation, a lot of the people are spending time at home, and our user base is actually, it has grown a lot in the past few months. So this service is available on our website for free. So if you're interested, please visit our website and yeah, try it out. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, and a bit on the numbers. So big numbers. And so we have a lot of users on our user base. on our platform, and we work with a lot of developers and help them to promote their mobile games to BlueStacks users. So on BlueStacks, we have very high quality users since PC gamers, they tend to really focus on their gameplay, and also they're not hesitant about making in-app purchases. So for the mobile game developers, it's a very, how can I say, high quality platform, and we help them promote their games and connect with these users on our platform. Next page, please. And just recently, we also launched a new service called Game.tv. So this is a totally separate brand from BlueStacks. And the concept is a mobile esports platform. So we enable users to host tournaments, and we automate a lot of the tournament orchestration for the smooth operation. So this is another business that we are launching in Japan right now. So that's all from my side for the moment about myself and the company. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. I can imagine that the number of people who are not riding the trains anymore, especially here in Japan,
Right.
and log into these games from a bigger screen must be tremendous.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the people who are now working from home, they're using their time to work on their games as well in a more efficient manner using BlueStacks.
Thank you so much. All right, I just wanted to take a little bit of a step back in terms of setting this stage, because it's really difficult to talk about remote onboarding if we're not also talking about why we need to pay attention to this right now. And it's really because so many more companies are working and hiring from home. If not full-time, then at least with a big portion of their time. So here's just a little bit of data to kind of set the scene here. One thing that I've seen a lot of, not just firsthand, but also in the news, is that work from home policies are changing. We're hearing it from our clients, we're experiencing it ourselves, but this is a global trend. This data here is from a survey of 500 plus venture-backed startups, I believe mostly in the US. And they were basically asking them, hey, a lot of your teams are working remote right now, but what's going to happen in the future? And these were the responses that they gave. They were saying that 70% of them felt that they would continue to allow employees to work remotely even after the pandemic and the restrictions in their areas were lifted. For some companies, this means full-time, and for some, it's a couple of days a week, but it's still a significant change over what we were seeing 6 months ago. Another trend is that companies are reconsidering investments in their office space. So 66% of founders were thinking about, do we need to have as much office space? Or I've been reading a lot about renovations, companies who are saying, look, we don't need this many desks. What we need are spaces for collaboration or co-working or safe meetings, because when people come into our office, their function that they need from the workspace is completely different than it was back in January or February. And the other one that's important to note is that 76% of these founders said that productivity had either maintained at the same level or increased while people were working from home. And there's a lot of research and discussion around this, but it's really interesting and reassuring to see that this transition, even in the midst of such a stressful global situation, is still resulting in an environment where people are able to continue working. Now, that was looking at the kind of founder or company perspective, but we're seeing really similar numbers from employees as well. It turns out they like working from home too. So the data in different markets is really similar. In the US, this particular survey was run by Gallup, I believe, and they found that 74% of people wanted to continue working from home. Again, either full-time or partially. And 70% of respondents to a survey here in Japan said that they would also. And this survey was asking, what are the major benefits of working from home? And most people said that it was reducing their commuting time. So that's what made me think of the shift from mobile gaming to being able to access those things on a PC. So whichever way you look at it, this work from home trend is ongoing. It looks like it's going to be here with us long term. And as a result of this, we're seeing a lot of companies make moves to change their policies. And it started out that many of these were short-term changes. Okay, we're going to work from home for these next couple of months. We're going to work from home until the end of the pandemic. But what's happening is that those timelines are extending. So there's a lot of news of the big tech companies, you know, your Facebooks and Googles, who are saying, okay, we're going to extend our work from home options into 2021. You have other tech companies like Twitter and Square who are saying you can work from home forever, right? And lots of things in between. But you're also starting to see companies that are outside of that tech bubble, like Nationwide Insurance or MasterCard, Siemens, and Hitachi, who have been making news over the past month or two because they're changing their work from home policies in a really significant and public way. Now, I mentioned in the opening that Wahl+Case has experienced this transition firsthand. And I just think it would be interesting to share this potentially. We're a pretty small firm compared to the likes of a Facebook or a Google. And we work in a sales environment that's very team oriented and really value the time that we get to spend sitting beside each other in terms of learning or sharing information. And so the idea of going to a fully remote environment was one that seemed tough for us to imagine before we had to do it in March. And at that stage, we made the transition quite quickly and quite smoothly, which was very lucky for everyone involved, I think. We were very fortunate to have a good experience with it. But what that's taught us is that actually we could continue to work this way over time. And as a result, a couple of months ago, we decided that we would be a remote first organization indefinitely, that we would keep an office space as an option for the people who like to go in, but that working from home as much as you want would be something that was available to really all the members of our group company, EQ IQ. So I think we're an example of a company that is quite new to this. And Christy, on the other hand, is bringing quite a bit more experience. So I'm really excited, Christy, to talk to you a bit more about what remote looks like at BlueStacks. And you mentioned that the whole team here in Japan and in many of your international offices is remote. So I just wonder, what does that look like? Could you paint the picture for us of how that plays out?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have a very international team. So our headquarters is based in Silicon Valley, but actually in the Bay Area, we have less than 10 people. And our biggest office is actually in India with all the engineers and including our CTO. And the next biggest is China, where we have a separate product since it's a unique market. So in China, we have, I think, about 40 members. And everyone else is in 20 plus countries, including Japan. So in a lot of the areas, we only have, one or just few people working for the company. So in most of the areas, we don't have entities or office, and everyone is working from home to start with. So that's kind of our company environment as the whole company. And I just wanted to share this episode of when I joined BlueStacks. So the main reason for me joining this company was because I wanted to go back to the Bay Area to work again. But for me, it was very tough to find a position where I can leverage my experience in Japan but work from the US. And so I was struggling, but BlueStacks, our CEO Rosen was willing to give me that opportunity. So what he told me when I joined is that our company is free and you're welcome to work from anywhere. So he supported for my visa, and so I think our whole company culture is coming from Rosen with this flexibility and everything. So just wanted to share that episode. And in Japan now we have 4 members, including myself. So one member joined in May, and the two other members joined in June. So all of the three, they joined in midst of COVID-19. And for the two members that joined in June, the hiring was 100% on remote. So, it was very interesting experience for me as well. But yeah, that's kind of like the background of our whole company culture and how our team in Japan looks like right now.
Thank you so much. Um, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing from this style of work?
Yes. So, when the new members joined, they asked me, do we have like core work hours? Or do they have to submit like their working hours every day? And the answer is no. So we don't have that kind of rules. It's really very flexible. And that I think is a good part. But on the other hand, we receive messages like 24/7 from all over the world, and how to deal with that kind of pressure to be responsive to all these messages. You have to kind of balance out that stress, and so I think that could be a challenge for some people. So I also try to work around that as well. And also, if you're working from home, I think it might be tough for some people to kind of shift on and off work and your personal life. Especially if you have a family and like kids, I think it might be a bit tough. So yeah, that, I think, there needs to be some option, like, have some space, like co-working space where you can use whenever you feel like it. Yeah, that option would certainly help. And also in terms of hiring, so in our interviews, we try to address to the candidates that, if you're someone who needs the boss, then you're not going to be like a good fit. Because in our company, we really need someone, proactive and, getting things done. But you never know until they join and how it works. So in the past we did have to get let go a few people because it was not working out. So yeah, that could be a challenge. So when I have a question in my head, oh, what is he or she doing every day, then that's not a good sign. So we do face that kind of challenges every once in a while.
I can see how that would definitely come up, especially if you have an employee who's relatively new to working from home. I would imagine it's quite a big transition, and even for that person, it might be difficult for them to guess how comfortable or good at that environment they would be.
Yeah.
What are the things that you really love about being fully remote?
I think this, flexibility, because, you can get your other daily tasks done more, in a more efficient way, like go to the bank or, post office during the weekdays, you can get those things done in a very efficient way. So I think, yeah, just, this flexibility is a really great thing for us.
You mentioned hiring and how the folks that you hired back in June had a fully remote process. And I think this is really interesting because we hear from both sides really that it can be hard to make a decision without meeting in person. As comfortable as many of us are with technology, something about hiring still feels like it needs to be two people sitting in office chairs having a discussion, and it can be quite tough to get out of that mindset. Was that a big shift for you to overcome that, or for BlueStacks as a company?
Yeah, so for me, it was personally not an issue at all. So as long as I can spend enough time talking to the candidate online with the camera on, I don't think there's a big difference from meeting in person. So for me, it wasn't really much of an issue to start with. And since, we're a global company, like if you're hiring people in other geos too. All the interviews are going to be online anyways. So I think I'm pretty comfortable with that culture already. So yeah, I was okay with that. And so for two of the members that joined in June, we did the interviews all online, and they joined, and it's been working very well at the moment. So yeah, I don't see much issue or concern about doing interviews, everything online.
Thank you. I think that even though a lot of people know these days they'll be doing a lot of their work online, as we were transitioning into that, it seemed like a big hurdle, and hopefully it's getting a little bit easier for companies. But it's really reassuring to hear that you and a team that have been doing this for a while feel really good about the decisions you're making that way. Another challenge, and really what we want to come to as kind of the big point for this webinar as well, is remote onboarding. How do you bring those new starters into your team when, I don't know, you don't have a conference room to sit at together, or they're not going to just learn about the company culture by wandering around getting a new cup of coffee? Well, what does onboarding look like for you guys?
Yes, so I would say onboarding is actually tougher than the hiring, because even though we still have a small team, it was very tough for me because the two members that joined in June, one was for BlueStacks and one was for Game.tv. So I had to have a separate training session for each of the members, and I'm the only one available for Japan. So I really had to spend a lot of time on the training. And I didn't want, the new members to kind of feel lost or, feel lonely in their first days. So I tried to, find time to set up a call and talk to them as much as possible. And I think it's important that you let them know that, they can reach out to you whenever they need help. So I think that's the most important thing. And for hiring managers, I think it's important that you schedule out everything at the time when these new members are joining, because I think for you it would be the first priority to have this conversation with the new members. So I tried not to schedule other meetings as much as possible and spend time with the new members and training. But I ended up spending like 7 hours in front of PC, doing all the training sessions, and then I would have like other meetings. So for me, it was very, very tiring in these first days. I would say it's not easy, but I think it's very important to make the new members feel welcomed and comfortable. So for me, that was the first priority for their first days at BlueStacks.
We found that adjustment to scheduling the day a little bit differently when you're doing everything by Zoom was definitely our biggest learning of our spring onboarding as well. We had a handful of people join, and we follow quite a structured new starter training program for our recruitment teams. And so we said, okay, we'll just take it all online. And our first day or two are usually really busy. We want people to feel like someone is paying attention to them. They're engaged. They don't have any moments of sitting at their desk, moving pens and feeling nervous that they don't know what to do. But in person, that translates to walking out and getting a coffee, sitting at the conference table, doing something at your desk, learning where different things are, going out for lunch, meeting different people. And when you do it on Zoom and you just sit there all day long in the same chair, worrying that the delivery guy is going to ring your doorbell. That's exhausting. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it really resonates with me. I think it's a really important point for everybody to.
Yeah, that 7 hours consecutively was really tough. And at that time I was thinking, if you're in an office, even if you have all these meetings consecutively, you have chance to like switch to conference room and just kind of get refreshed. But when you're working from home, you're just sitting at your desk and just staring at your PC for that's all you can do. So, you know, yeah, it could be tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing you said that really stands out to me, and I want to kind of draw an underline underneath it, is the fact that managers have to be really proactive in arranging check-ins and scheduling things with their new hires and reminding them that it's okay to reach out, because we lose all of those social cues.
Mm.
The person can look across the room and see if you're on the phone, or if you look really stressed out, or if you're, you know, getting a fresh cup of coffee and happy to have a casual chat. So giving them a lot of extra permission to break through the invisible wall and reach out to you, I think probably goes a long way in helping them feel connected.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also, you know, this was an idea coming from one of the new members. So she proposed to have a weekly lunch together, especially because we have two business lines. For the members on BlueStacks team and Game.tv team, they don't merge a lot during the work hours. So we've scheduled a weekly lunch on Fridays to just, you know, kind of chat and get to know each other, you know, away from work, but, you know, just casually talk. So I think that was a really good idea to have that, you know, time together.
That's great. And you said you guys do that weekly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yes.
That is another one of the big challenges. In terms of other thoughts on remote onboarding, would you have any other tips that we haven't mentioned so far for companies that might be doing this the first time?
Not really. So yeah, as I mentioned, I think, you know, the most important thing is to, you know, have the new members feel comfortable. So, you know, to provide that environment, I think is the most important thing. And yeah, I think we've covered most of the items.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy, for sharing about the remote environment at BlueStacks. I want to just loop back around to remote onboarding a little bit more generally, and we'll give a few tips that I think should be quite actionable. And I hope it's something that anyone joining us today can take and look at applying pretty directly. They're not super high cost, mega time intensive kind of ideas, but they're the kinds of things that I think could really have an impact on how your employees experience onboarding. And one of the things that I've learned, and that research is steadily showing, is that the onboarding experience is so critical. It has huge impacts on everything from whether or not this new starter will stay, to whether they would recommend your company to their friends or to strangers on Glassdoor. So actually, speaking of Glassdoor, there's a survey that I always comes to mind that says when you have a great onboarding program, it can increase your retention by 82% and can increase productivity by 70%. And those are really big numbers. So I want to just dive in a little bit here and share just a few tips that tie in a lot of what Christy has shared with us from her experience onboarding new employees remotely. So the first thing is to make it easy to get online and start working. I think my biggest fear when I'm onboarding someone remotely is that they wake up on their first day and they're not sure what to do. And they feel like they're on their own to figure it out. You don't want that to happen in person in your office, and you definitely don't want it to happen when someone is removed from your physical work environment. So one thing that we do is try to send out a package that has all of the physical tech tools that people need, you know, their MacBook, their charger, a little bit of company swag, a welcome kit, all of the information that they'll need to log in and get set up. And that arrives to their house a couple of days before they start. And then we also send them an email with kind of emergency backup logins, just in case they open their computer that morning and it doesn't turn on or something. They know how they can still get their day started. Christy, what do you guys do to get folks online when you don't have an office to bring them into for their
Yeah. So our team, we're not that systematic. So for like the welcome kit, or like, you know, all the like their laptops or anything they need to start actually working, we ask them to purchase on their own, and we will reimburse afterwards. So we let them choose whatever PC they want to use. We'll of course check beforehand, but we ask them to choose one within the budget, and yeah, make the reimbursement afterwards.
That sounds great. We use Macs, and I love Mac, but it's a learning curve for people who don't. So I'm sure that there's a handful of people who would be happy to choose an environment that they're more comfortable with. The other thing that I would just mention here is to reinforce what Christy was saying about setting a schedule for the first few days. You want to make sure that people know when they're going to be able to connect with you, when you're available for questions. And the focus on connectivity kind of has two meanings here. On the one hand, I mean, getting connected with their work tools. So connected to email and your CRM system or whatever you're using to manage projects and information within the company. They should be able to get logged into all that in their first morning, ideally. But I also mean connectivity in terms of that person-to-person connection, getting to know the people that they're going to be working with, and especially their manager. So that FaceTime, maybe not 7 hours in a row, but definitely get it in your schedule so that you have the chance to get some FaceTime together with your new starter. All right. The next thing that I have here is to manage expectations and introduce your culture. We talked a little bit about maybe like the work culture around messaging. And Christy, you said you guys are in an international environment. People are working basically 24 hours a day. And making sure that people are disconnecting from work is really important. Is that typically a conversation that you have with folks in their first couple of days?
Yes. So yeah, I share our work environment, this international environment. So they'll be receiving all these inquiries basically 24/7. So I let them know. I think a lot of the new members feel pressured because a lot of our colleagues, they're very responsive and quick. So yeah, I assure them, don't feel pressured. Of course, it's good that we make the responses in a timely manner, but please kind of try to balance out that the work hours and your personal time.
I think that's something that even folks who have been working with a company for a while can sometimes struggle with. So when you have a new starter who really wants to do a good job and doesn't know what the rules are yet, really spelling it out to them can probably bring them a lot of relief, especially if they're going to get messages from Europe and in the US and time zones that are definitely sleeping hours here for us in Tokyo.
Yeah, and I think, with the numbers you shared in the first few slides, and a lot of the companies are saying that the productivity went, either up or, stayed about the same. So I think that kind of reflects that, people are, not trying to be lazy because they're at home, but I think people try to be more responsive, and yeah, might be even tougher to kind of stay away from work. So it's important for managers to kind of let them know, kind of like lay back and yeah, to kind of make that shift on and off from work.
Absolutely. It's really cliche to say this, but it's not a sprint. I think that for some companies, when they were starting working from home, it seemed like something that would be just a really short-term fix. So people might not have spent a lot of time learning healthy habits around working remotely in a sustainable long-term way. But whether you're in a situation like BlueStacks, where this is something you guys have been doing for years, or you're just learning how to do it, checking in with your employees and making sure that they're taking care of themselves first and foremost, so that they're able to kind of keep going over the long term, will probably be better for your productivity and all of those things over time as well. The other thing that I have on here is to assign a welcome buddy or arrange times for teams to mix casually. Assigning a welcome buddy comes up all of the time when people ask, survey, whatever, employees and say, what are the kinds of things that you'd like to see in an onboarding experience? And a lot of them are that people want to know what is expected of them, have an easy place to access information about the company. You know, where are the different policies and procedures and background information? Where can I get a PowerPoint slide deck? Having that stuff really easily accessible to people makes them feel like the barriers to doing their work are low. But then the other side are someone else that they can connect with, so that if their manager is sick or unavailable and they have a systems question, or they have a, what do you usually wear to team lunch kind of question, there's somebody outside of their direct manager that they can ask those questions to. So introducing a lunch mixer, like you guys are doing, Christy, where the team members get to casually connect with each other outside of their work roles, specifically assigning a buddy, but just thinking about how can you help your new starters build their internal network, their internal relationships, and their knowledge of your business without sharing a workspace, I think is one of the big challenges and key things to keep in mind when you're thinking about a remote onboarding program. Alrighty, kind of next here is the idea of thinking beyond orientation and having something more like a 90-day plan. So I've seen some numbers around many companies having something between a 1 to 7 day, or I guess 1 week program, where they're really just getting people through paperwork. So 58% of organizations say their onboarding program is really just processes and paperwork. Like, this is our IT security policy, this is where you do your HR documentation, and they're not necessarily going beyond that. But I think communicating a plan for what success will look like, what someone's milestones are at different stages, what kind of training they can expect, not just to get set up, but beyond that, and when they're going to be able to meet with their manager. Do you have weekly one-on-ones? You're going to check in once a month? Do you have a tool for sharing updates on your OKRs? Whatever that is, try to share that with your new starters as soon as possible and have a plan that extends beyond kind of that honeymoon / bombarded with new information stage, where they're just getting everything in those first couple of days. And you make sure that there's consistent communication and clear targets for the time beyond that. All right. Anything else to add at this stage, Christy?
No, not really, but yeah, I can share my episode. So yesterday we had a lunch with all our members, and it was our first time meeting in person after a couple of months. So it was a very interesting experience. And after we had lunch, we spent time at this co-working space. So I think, you know, with this COVID situation, you can't really say, but I think it would be helpful if you can provide this kind of option for your you know, employees to work outside of their homes as well, and also to have, you know, some you know, opportunity to spend time together in person as well, of course, every once in a while. So.
Absolutely, especially if you're relatively close. It sounds like you guys are mostly in Tokyo, so it's great that you can get the team together, you know, safely when the conditions are right. All right. So just the last thing to mention, this has kind of been a theme throughout the discussion today, but keep in mind that what works in the office may not translate well to a remote work environment. So you may have to make adjustments. And as your team continues to grow, or as the situation changes, just be ready to make adjustments. Kind of as with anything else, something that was working really great for you a couple of months ago might need a bit of a refresh. So keep in mind that it's an ongoing process. You're never going to have one perfect onboarding program that you can run with for the rest of your life. It's going to be continually evolving with your team. And I think that continuing to share what's working for you is a great way to make sure that, you know, your colleagues are also making the best of the situation, because this is definitely a challenge that a lot of us will face and continue to face over the next couple of months, if not indefinitely. So thank you so much for joining us through this portion of the presentation. And at this stage, if you have any questions for Christy or for me or the both of us, we'll go back through the chat and start pulling them out. But if you've been shy, you haven't posted it yet, please go ahead now and put your questions in the chat, and we'll answer as many of them as we can this afternoon.
Hey guys, my name is Anju. Let me just join here and read out the questions so Christine and Christy can focus 100% on responding to those. So question number 1 is from Archie Google. A part of onboarding is also evaluating the new hires' performance in the first couple of months, not just training them about the culture of the workplace and standard practices. How do you handle this in your respective organizations?
It's a good question. Christy, do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So for myself, for the first month, I tried to be a very nice person and, focus on training. And if they have any questions, I will answer, all the questions. But if they keep asking me like same questions, or if I have to point out, something that I had pointed out before, then, I have to be a little bit stricter. So I think, the first month, I think you can just really be a nice person and share about the company culture and just like, training and getting them to get used to this, work style. But then starting from maybe second, third month, you have to be a bit, more like stern and be a little bit like a mean person. And I think also you can't really blame the members, but as a manager, you have to also make sure that you're, giving them a clear target, what they are supposed to be doing. So I try to make sure that I have that, target clear for every member so that they know what they should be doing. So yeah, I try to keep that in mind. And yeah, and one thing about, working from home, as I mentioned before, once I get, this question, oh, what is he or she doing every day, then that's not a good sign. So when I start to feel that kind of, to get that question, I will have to start, alerting that member and, make sure that he or she is clear about the target and know what they should be doing. So yes, that's how I try to deal with this, yeah, the first couple of months.
Thank you. I mean, for our part within Wahl+Case, I'm just going to piggyback on what Christy said about having a really clear target. So what we make sure is that everybody who's coming on board has very specific and transparent expectations for the first 3 months. Really is the first window that we look at. So we say, at the end of this period, these are the things that we'd like you to have achieved. And really for any position, we can have some measurable goals for what, essentially getting up to speed and learning the fundamentals of the role and being able to take a bit more ownership and work more independently in that capacity going forward looks like. And so we try to shape our training programs around that and allow chances for us to check in and evaluate. So in terms of how we can measure performance, one thing that we look at is having some measurable outcomes or quantifiable KPIs that we're looking at. And so that's one element. Another thing is that we add in some role plays or some kind of shadowing exercises throughout the training period so that we can see what that person is doing when they go out and apply the training information and give them feedback on it. And then also we have pretty frequent check-ins. So all of our managers are meeting with their team members once a week for a one-on-one check-in, but then new starters who are in their probationary period or working towards that first set of goals also meet with me every couple of weeks, and we reflect back on the trainings and talk about where they're at against those targets. So we try to make sure that there's a mix of feedback on what they're doing right in front of them that day in this training session, as well as how they're projecting towards those 3-month goals. And really the purpose of those goals is for them to have the tools to continue to succeed in the months that follow. So connecting that first set of goals to the bigger picture is another part of the goal setting that is quite important for us. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Next question is, are there any icebreakers and exercises you did that worked well to connect newcomers and existing team members?
Okay, maybe I can share some of my episodes. So as I mentioned, we do like a weekly lunch to just kind of chat and have a good time. And because we're in gaming, we talk about games. So, you know, I think it's a good topic for us to kind of get close to each other. And no, I'm thinking maybe we can do like, since we have game.tv and we can do like an online tournament, we can have that kind of online event for that kind of icebreaker. Yeah, so that's an idea I have in mind.
We do something similar. There's some online games the teams can get on and play that are not too intense, but you know, people could still get a little bit competitive about them. Things like even online Pictionary or trivia games. And then also every Friday, there's a group-wide meeting that we call Celebrations Friday. And basically everyone logs in and shares wins across the company. We recognize birthdays and shout out things that people have been doing within our teams that you might not get to see because, you know, we don't get to notice when someone is doing something a couple of desks away when we're offline. So making sure that there's some opportunities for everybody to get together and introduce themselves and have a little bit of fun helps us to connect them as well.
Great, thank you. Question number 3. What do we find great onboarding?
I would say great onboarding is one that gives your new starter a real sense of connection and purpose in their role at your company, but also puts them in a position to be successful at doing it. So I think it's a combination of getting them the support and the resources that they need to excel at their job, and also building the relationship and bringing them into the vision of the company in a way that makes them excited to do it.
I also agree with Christine. I think, you know, this relationship is the key to the success. So yeah, I would say the relationship for a smooth start. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Then there's one more question. Do you think the environment, like clean and well-designed office, still stimulate the creativity?
I'll jump in here, and then Christy, maybe you have another idea. I think it would be interesting to hear both sides, but I think that just getting out of your house and being somewhere where you have the chance to mix with other people can certainly help to stimulate creativity. Does it need to be like a clean, nice, traditional office space in order for that to happen? I don't know. But there is something nice, I think, about having a shared space that can help to bring people together. I think that's one of the benefits of an office that keeps many people wanting to go in at least part of the time. It gives them a little bit of an identity or a connection outside of their home. And also, yeah, just the process of getting there, you get to encounter so much. Our CEO talks about how he loves just walking through our neighborhood in Harajuku because there's so many things happening all the time, different shops, different kinds of people, that just getting out of your neighborhood and into a place where you're exposed to something different can be inspiring in itself. So maybe yes and no. What do you think, Christy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not so sure about the creativity, but I think it will definitely help with the motivation of the employees to have a nice environment that you can use and concentrate on your work. So yeah, but one thing is, when you move into a new office, everything looks so nice and you feel very motivated, but of course you're going to get used to the environment. So that's another thing I think you have to keep in mind. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is, what are some of the technology tools that made the transition to remote easier? Are there any that you can't operate without now?
Christy, do you want to go first? You guys are.
Sure. So within our company, we used to use Google Hangouts, but now we're shifted to Google Chat. So this is our company tool that we use both for text and also for this kind of video conferencing. So yeah, to have one universal tool worldwide with all the colleagues, I think is important. And I think without this, it's very hard to communicate with all the colleagues around the world. But I think that's basically it. The tools that we use internally.
We are not as simplified, it sounds like, as BlueStacks is in terms of getting down to one tool that really works well for us. So, we use Slack, and we share a lot of resources within something like Google Drive for our intranets. But I think that the tools that made it easy for us to transition to remote work in our industry of doing recruitment is probably two main things. And one is that we could have access to a secure database from home already. We didn't have to make that transition. And the other thing was that we just happened to be transitioning away from from phones on our desk in February and March anyway. So by the time the work from home order essentially came out here in Japan, we had already switched everyone to like a voice over IP system where they could access their work phone either through their computer or through their cell phones. And that really made all the difference for us as a recruitment company to have consistent database access and to have consistent access to our phones, and folks still being able to call us. So I think those tools really helped to make the transition smooth for us.
Great, thank you. There's a few more. Next one is kind of interesting. Were there any especially traumatic but valuable learning experiences at Wahl+Case or BlueStacks during onboarding that have shaped the current and most updated process? You had mentioned adjustments from normal onboarding processes as a key consideration.
Sure, I can take this one first, Christy. I alluded to it briefly, but we used to run a very full day of trainings, and we did that to folks who joined us in the spring, and they were exhausted and miserable by the end of it. So I think that one of the big things that we've learned is that we have to be much more mindful with the scheduling, that you can't do back-to-back trainings or scheduled trainings immediately following other team meetings, because the amount of time that people are spending on Zoom and a video call is much more fatiguing than having those face-to-face meetings would be. So that's one of the big things. Another thing that we learned is that a lot of the learning on the desk, the kind of on-the-job training that happens when you're sitting beside people who are more experienced than you, and you can just kind of overhear their interactions or be part of a conversation they're having about a challenge and learn a little bit from those moments, is harder to do remotely. And so we've had to be a lot more intentional about creating spaces and even scheduling time for things that might have happened a little bit more organically if people were sitting side by side, but that we still wanted to ensure we're part of our work culture, even if we couldn't physically be next to each other. So I don't know if that counts as a traumatic experience. I did have a couple of people who messaged me and just begged me to give them breaks between meetings. So it's maybe a little more traumatic on their side, but that would be probably my main takeaways.
Yeah, so for my side, I think it might kind of relate to, the performance issue. So there were times with our past members when I would, question myself, what is he or she doing? And, but, there were a lot of learnings from that. So as I mentioned, maybe I should have been more clearer about their goals, or, that member did not reach out to me much. So maybe I wasn't giving that, atmosphere. Oh, Christy is always busy. Maybe I shouldn't bother her. Maybe I was giving that kind of impression. So, there were a lot of, things to reflect on my side as well. So I think, from the past experiences, there are a lot of things to learn from.
Thank you. There's two questions from Akane, so I think I can combine them. How do you hold line managers accountable to perform onboarding well? AKA, how do you ensure consistent onboarding experience throughout the company?
Yeah, so from my side, yeah, there's not really a direct answer, since I'm like the only hiring manager. I take care of everything myself. So for me, I don't have a direct answer. So maybe Christine, you can help to answer this question.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it can be a challenge. And as much as having a unified message as a company in terms of what your culture is, and what kind of work environment you have, what kind of resources and support you want to share with people, that's important to be, I think, pretty consistent on. But at the end of the day, within different teams or divisions, there are differences in the way that they work. There are realistic differences in the way that a manager will lead that team going forward. And so some of that may come up in the onboarding process. And a company, if they identify issues around that, can work to train or coach or support those managers in understanding why the things that they might not be executing or consistently following up on are important, and making sure they have the resources they need to do that. But I think there's going to be a natural variation when it comes down to the direct communication, training, and the style of the specific hiring manager in each team.
All right, thank you. I know it's time, but we have one final question. So let's just answer this and then call it a day. What incentives did you provide to your employees during the transition to full remote work? Like, did you give them allowances for the increased home expense on electricity, water, etc.?
So for us, we did not do any big incentive programs going into that period. I think that we tried to just make sure that there were some additional resources available in terms of learning tools and support, but we didn't run a specific financial campaign.
Yes, and at BlueStacks, so we didn't really have this transition, right? We were working from home anyways, but how it works for us is that the company will pay for the mobile expense, but I think for others, there's not much additional incentives from working from home. But of course, like if you have meetings outside, like having coffee, of course that can be reimbursed. But yeah, I think that's mostly it from for us.
Thank you. Christine, any final words?
just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who joined us today, but most of all, thank you so much to Christy for joining us and sharing your experience and the environment at BlueStacks with us this afternoon. I believe we'll have a recording of this available, and our team will probably reach out to you. But if you have any questions, you can probably follow up with Anju about the details. And thank you again, Christy.
Thank you so much, Wahl+Case team, for arranging this and also having me. I really enjoyed it. And thank everyone for joining.
Thanks so much, everybody. Please stay safe and good luck with your remote onboarding.